Rain poured down on the city streets as she clutched the leather wallet. The payment for her honesty would change everything. The millionaire watched from his limousine, unaware that this payment of fate would lead to something neither of them expected. At 32, she never imagined she'd be sleeping in a shelter, carrying all her possessions in a worn backpack, and walking miles each day in search of work. The economic downturn had been merciless. First her job at the marketing firm, then her apartment, and finally her dignity. But Sarah was determined not to let circumstances define her. She adjusted her only presentable outfit, a slightly wrinkled blouse and black pants she'd carefully maintained for job interviews, and headed toward the financial district. The tall glass buildings reflected the morning sun, housing thousands of people with stable incomes and homes to return to each night. Sarah clutched her small folder containing her resume, each copy precious and protected from the elements. Men and women in expensive suits rushed by, clutching coffee cups and staring at smartphones. Sarah felt invisible among them, a ghost moving through a world that had forgotten her existence. Several blocks into her journey, Sarah noticed a commotion ahead. A sleek black Bentley had pulled up to the curb, and a cluster of assistants surrounded a man as he emerged from the vehicle. She recognized him immediately from business magazines and news reports. Maxwell Richardson, tech mogul and philanthropist, worth billions after his software company went public 3 years ago. He moved with confidence, nodding to his assistants as they briefed him while walking toward a skyscraper entrance. Sarah watched, momentarily distracted from her job hunt. Something caught her eye, a small black object on the sidewalk where the Bentley had been. Moving closer, she realized it was a wallet. An expensive one, by the looks of it. Glancing around to see if anyone else had noticed, Sarah picked it up. The leather was buttery soft, clearly custom-made. Opening it cautiously, she found several credit cards, a driver's license with Maxwell Richardson's stern face, and a thick wad of $100 bills, more money than she had seen in months. Time seemed to slow as Sarah stared at the contents. The cash alone could pay for a modest apartment for months, buy new clothes for interviews, and provide some stability while she continued her job search. No one had seen her pick it up. No one would know. Her hands trembled slightly as a battle raged within her. 8 months of hardship, hunger, and humiliation fought against the principles her parents had instilled in her. The money represented immediate relief from her struggles, a way out, at least temporarily. But as she looked at Richardson's ID again, something else occurred to her. This was an opportunity, albeit a different kind than she initially thought. Returning the wallet to such a powerful man could lead to connections, perhaps even employment. It was a long shot, but Sarah had nothing left to lose. Decision made, she tucked the wallet into her folder and approached the building's security desk. "Excuse me," Sarah said, trying to appear more confident than she felt. Mr. Richardson dropped his wallet outside. "I need to return it to him." The security guard eyed her suspiciously, taking in her slightly worn attire. "Mr. Richardson is in a meeting. I can take it and ensure he gets it." Sarah hesitated. If she handed over the wallet now, her opportunity would vanish. "I'd prefer to return it personally. It contains something important." The guard's expression hardened. Mr. Richardson is extremely busy. If you won't leave it with me, I'll have to ask you to leave." Just as Sarah was about to reluctantly surrender the wallet, a woman in a crisp suit approached the desk. "Is there a problem here, Marcus? This lady claims to have Mr. Richardson's wallet. Won't leave it with me." The woman turned to Sarah with assessing eyes. "I thought maybe if I returned it personally, it might lead to a job opportunity." Something in Vivian's expression shifted, not pity exactly, but recognition. Most people in your situation might have been tempted to keep the cash. I considered it, Sarah admitted. But that wouldn't solve my problems long term. I need steady employment, not a temporary fix. Vivian studied her for a moment longer before nodding. Mr. Richardson is in meetings all morning. However, he has a brief break at noon. I can arrange for you to see him then. Wait in the lobby, and I'll come for you. Sarah's heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. Don't thank me yet, Vivian replied with a slight smile. Mr. Richardson can be unpredictable. The next 3 hours were among the longest of Sarah's life. She sat stiffly in the elegant lobby, acutely aware of how out of place she appeared among the well-dressed professionals coming and going. The wallet felt heavy in her folder, a tangible reminder of how drastically different her life was from the man who owned it. At precisely noon, Vivian reappeared. He'll see you now. Follow me. Sarah was led through security checkpoints and into an express elevator that required a keycard to operate. As they ascended to the top floor, Vivian offered a brief warning: be direct and honest. Mr. Richardson values his time above all else. The elevator opened directly into a reception area decorated in minimalist-style all-glass, steel, and white surfaces. Sarah followed Vivian through imposing double doors into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Maxwell Richardson stood gazing out at the skyline, his back to the door. He was taller in person than Sarah had expected, his posture radiating authority. Sir, Vivian announced, this is Sarah Jenkins. She has your wallet. Richardson turned, his piercing grey eyes immediately fixing on Sarah. He was perhaps in his mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of features that photographs didn't quite capture correctly, more intense, more alive. Miss Jenkins, he said, his voice deep and measured. I understand I owe you my gratitude. Sarah stepped forward, extending the wallet. I found this outside your building, Mr. Richardson. He took it, briefly checking the contents before setting it on his desk. Everything seems to be in order. There was a considerable amount of cash inside. Yes, sir. Yet you chose to return it rather than keep it, despite your current circumstances. His gaze was analytical, assessing. Vivian mentioned that, Sarah said, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. Yes, I'm currently without permanent housing. I was in the area dropping off resumes when I saw you exit your car. Richardson gestured to a chair across from his desk. Please sit. Tell me about yourself. Surprised by the invitation, Sarah carefully sat down. What would you like to know? Start with your professional background. Vivian tells me you're seeking employment, not charity. For the next 10 minutes, Sarah outlined her experience in marketing, her education, and the series of unfortunate events that led to her current situation. Richardson listened without interruption, his expression giving away nothing. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. Your honesty in returning the wallet suggests strong character, Ms. Jenkins. Your resume indicates intelligence and capability. Yet you've been unemployed for 8 months. Why do you think that is? The directness of the question caught Sarah off guard. The job market is challenging right now, especially in marketing. And I suspect that as time passes without employment, my applications are viewed with increasing skepticism. Plus the practical challenges of maintaining a professional appearance without stable housing, Richardson added matter-of-factly. Yes, Sarah admitted. That's been difficult. Richardson stood suddenly, returning to the window. I believe in instinct, Ms. Jenkins. It's guided my business decisions for years. Right now, my instinct tells me you might be valuable to my organization. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. I'm willing to work hard in any position you think I'm suited for. Vivian needs an assistant, he said, turning back to face her. The position requires discretion, attention to detail, and the ability. You'll need appropriate attire, which the company will provide initially. Consider it an investment in your success. I thank you, Mr. Richardson. I accept. Good. He extended his hand, and Sarah rose to shake it. His grip was firm, businesslike. Don't make me regret this decision, Ms. Jenkins. I won't, she promised. As she turned to leave, Richardson added, and Sarah, I expect you to pay this opportunity forward someday, when you're in a position to do so. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind as Vivian guided Sarah through employee forms, building access protocols, and a basic orientation. By late afternoon, Sarah had been set up in a small, but elegant corporate apartment kept for visiting executives, provided with a corporate card to purchase professional attire, and given a schedule for the following day. That evening, as she stood in the apartment's bathroom, her first private bathroom in months, Sarah stared at her reflection in disbelief. The woman looking back at her was the same, yet everything had changed in the span of a single day. All because she had made the choice to return a wallet. A text message interrupted her thoughts. It was from an unknown number. Welcome to Richardson Enterprises. Instinct tells me you'll exceed expectations. Mr. Sarah smiled at the message, unaware that this was just the beginning of a connection that would transform both their lives in ways neither could imagine. The following weeks were a steep learning curve for Sarah. Assisting Vivian meant early mornings, late nights, and absorbing vast amounts of information about Richardson Enterprises' operations. The work was demanding but exhilarating after months of idleness and uncertainty. She rarely saw Maxwell Richardson himself, catching only glimpses of him in meetings or as he swept through the executive floor with his entourage. When their paths did cross, he acknowledged her with a brief nod, sometimes asking pointed questions about projects she was working on. His standards were impossibly high, but Sarah discovered she thrived under the pressure to meet them. 1 month into her employment, Sarah was reviewing presentation materials late one evening when Richardson emerged from his office. "You're here late, Ms. Jenkins," he observed, stopping by her desk. "Just ensuring tomorrow's board presentation materials are perfect, sir," she replied, surprised by his presence. "And are they?" "Not yet. There's an inconsistency in the third quarter projections that I've flagged for Vivian to address in the morning." Richardson's expression changed subtly: interest, perhaps even approval. "Show me." Sarah pulled up the relevant slides and explained the discrepancy she'd noticed. Richardson listened intently, then nodded. "Good catch. That would have been embarrassing tomorrow." He studied her for a moment. "Join me for the presentation. You should see how the board operates if you're going to advance in this company." The invitation was unexpected. "Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I'd appreciate that opportunity." "Vivian tells me you're exceeding expectations," he continued. "She's not easily impressed. I am grateful for the chance to prove myself." Richardson seemed about to say something else, but checked his watch instead. "It's nearly midnight. The company car will take you home. Board meeting is at 8 a.m. sharp." The pattern continued over the following months. Sarah's responsibilities increased gradually as Vivian came to trust her judgment. Occasionally, Richardson would pull her into high-level meetings or ask for her input on marketing materials, acknowledging her background in the field. Each interaction was brief, but substantive, focused entirely on work. 6 months after her hiring, Sarah had established herself as a valued member of the executive team. She had moved from the corporate apartment to her own place, built a new professional wardrobe, and begun to rebuild her savings. The nightmare of homelessness receded into memory, though she never forgot the lessons it had taught her. On the anniversary of her hiring, Sarah arrived at work to find a small package on her desk. Inside was a leather wallet similar to the one she had returned a year ago, but sized for a woman. A note accompanied it, to mark 1 year of excellent service. It was the first time he had used her first name. "Thank you for joining me." "Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Richardson," she replied, taking the seat the waiter held for her. "Maxwell, please. We are not in the office." The dinner conversation began with business, her performance review, which was exemplary, and a promotion offer to become Vivian's official deputy with a substantial salary increase. But as the meal progressed, the discussion shifted to more personal topics. "I've been curious," Maxwell said as they waited for dessert. "That day you returned my wallet, you mentioned being homeless. How did someone with your qualifications end up in that situation?" Sarah hesitated, but his expression showed genuine interest rather than judgment. She explained the series of events in greater detail than she had a year ago: the company downsizing, the health issue that drained her savings, the apartment loss, and the increasingly desperate search for work as her situation deteriorated. "The shelter system is overwhelmed," she concluded. "And once you're in that situation, climbing out becomes exponentially harder each day. Simple things most people take for granted: a shower before an interview, professional clothes, even a phone number and address to put on applications become nearly insurmountable obstacles." Maxwell listened intently, asking occasional questions that revealed he was truly engaged with her story. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You never mentioned any family," he observed. "My parents died in a car accident during my senior year of college. No siblings. Some distant relatives, but we are not close." "So you faced all of this alone?" Sarah nodded. "It taught me self-reliance, if nothing else. And integrity," Maxwell added. "Many people would have kept the wallet, particularly in your circumstances." "I considered it," she admitted. "But it wouldn't have solved my real problem." "Which was?" "Needing to rebuild my life on a foundation that wouldn't collapse again." Maxwell smiled slightly. "A wise assessment." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "I have a proposition for you, beyond the promotion." "I'm listening." "Richardson Enterprises has a charitable foundation that's underperforming. We donate money, but there's little strategic vision. I'd like you to develop a program specifically addressing homelessness and employment barriers based on your first-hand experience and marketing background. It would be a separate role from your executive duties, with its own budget and team." Sarah was stunned by the offer. "That's a significant responsibility." "You've earned my trust," Maxwell said simply. "And this issue clearly matters to you personally." "It does. I'd be honored to develop such a program." "Good. We'll discuss details next week." He hesitated, then added, "There's another matter I'd like to discuss, of a more personal nature." Sarah felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere between them. "Yes?" "I've maintained strict professional boundaries since your hiring. It seemed appropriate given the power dynamics involved. However, I've come to respect you not just as an employee, but as a person of exceptional character and intelligence. He met her eyes directly. I find myself interested in knowing you beyond our professional relationship, if you're open to that possibility. The directness of his statement took Sarah by surprise. Maxwell Richardson was not known for revealing personal feelings. His reputation was built on business acumen and strategic thinking, not emotional openness. I'm not sure what to say, she responded honestly. You don't need to say anything now, he assured her. Take time to consider whether that's something you'd be comfortable with. Regardless of your decision, the promotion and foundation opportunities stand on their own merits. Sarah appreciated his clarity. Thank you for being straightforward. I'll give it serious thought. The dinner concluded cordially, with Maxwell arranging for his driver to take Sarah home. As she rode through the nighttime city, after careful consideration, Sarah invited Maxwell for coffee on a Saturday afternoon in a quiet cafe far from their usual business haunts. They sat at a corner table, momentarily awkward outside the familiar structure of their professional relationship. I've been thinking about your proposition, Sarah began after they had exchanged pleasantries. Which one? Maxwell asked with a slight smile. The business one or the personal one? Both, actually. They are interconnected for me. She took a breath. I'm passionate about the foundation work. It feels like exactly what I should be doing with my experience. But I'm concerned that a personal relationship between us might compromise that work, or at least create the perception of impropriety. Maxwell nodded thoughtfully. A valid concern. What solution do you propose? I'd like to pursue the foundation work independently of our professional relationship at Richardson Enterprises. Set it up as a separate entity where I report to the board, not directly to you. And the personal aspect? Sarah met his gaze steadily. I would like to explore that possibility, but slowly and with clear boundaries. I value my professional identity too much to have it subsumed by a personal relationship with my boss. Something like respect, perhaps even admiration, flickered in Maxwell's eyes. You continue to surprise me, Sarah. Most people in your position would simply agree to whatever I suggested. Then you wouldn't be interested in them, she countered. He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually serious face. Precisely. Your terms are acceptable on both counts. We'll restructure the foundation as you suggested, and as for the personal, we can begin with coffee dates like this one and see where it leads. The foundation work progressed rapidly. Sarah assembled a team of experts in homelessness, employment training, and social services. Using her marketing background, she created a compelling narrative around second chances and removing structural barriers to employment. The Second Start initiative launched 6 months later, with significant media coverage and corporate partnerships. Meanwhile, her personal relationship with Maxwell evolved cautiously. Weekend coffees became dinner dates, then cultural outings to museums and concerts. Sarah discovered layers to Maxwell that weren't visible in the corporate environment: a deep appreciation for classical music, a surprisingly tender relationship with his elderly mother, and a thoughtful perspective on his own privileged position in society. One evening, nearly 2 years after Sarah had found Maxwell's wallet, they stood on the balcony of his penthouse apartment overlooking the city lights. I received the first success stories from the Second Start program today, Sarah told him, her voice filled with satisfaction. 3 participants have maintained stable employment for 6 months and moved into permanent housing. That's extraordinary, Maxwell replied. You've built something remarkable. We have, she corrected gently. Your funding and support made it possible. The funding, perhaps. The vision was entirely yours. He turned to face her fully. You've transformed not just those lives, but mine as well. Sarah looked at him questioningly. How so? Before I met you, success was measured in acquisitions and profit margins. You've shown me a different kind of wealth. He took her hand. I dropped my wallet that day 2 years ago. You could have taken what you needed and disappeared. Instead, you chose integrity under impossible circumstances. That choice changed everything for you, for the people your program helps, and for me. Are you suggesting it was fate? Sarah asked with a slight smile. I'm suggesting that character reveals itself in moments of crisis. Yours revealed a woman I couldn't help falling in love with. The declaration hung in the air between them, sincere and unadorned. Sarah felt the weight of their journey from a chance encounter on a street. The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Sarah woke, still adjusting to the reality of her new life. 3 years had passed since that fateful day when she found Maxwell's wallet. Their relationship had blossomed from cautious beginnings into something profound and genuine. Maxwell had proposed 6 months ago, on the anniversary of their first meeting, and Sarah had accepted with a mixture of joy and lingering disbelief at how dramatically her life had transformed. But success hadn't changed her fundamental character. Each morning, Sarah still woke with the same determination that had carried her through her darkest days. The Second Start initiative had grown beyond her initial vision, now operating in 12 cities across the country. Over 800 formerly homeless individuals had secured stable employment through the program, with a remarkable 70% retention rate after 2 years. Today was particularly significant: the groundbreaking ceremony for Second Start Village, an innovative housing community designed specifically for program participants transitioning from shelters to independence. The project represented everything Sarah had learned about the complex challenges of homelessness, incorporating affordable housing, on-site career counseling, childcare facilities, and mental health services. Nervous about today? Maxwell asked, entering the bedroom with 2 cups of coffee. Sarah accepted the steaming mug gratefully. A little. The press coverage will be substantial. You've prepared thoroughly, as always. He sat beside her on the edge of the bed. This project is going to change lives. I hope so. Sarah gazed out at the city skyline. I keep thinking about how close I came to being permanently trapped in that cycle. One decision changed everything for me. Maxwell's expression grew thoughtful. I've been meaning to ask you something about that day. What's that? Did you ever consider not returning the wallet? Truly? Sarah considered the question carefully. Yes, she finally admitted. For about 30 seconds. The cash alone would have covered months of housing. It was tempting. What stopped you? 2 things, Sarah replied. First, practical considerations. The temporary relief wouldn't solve my long-term problems. But more importantly, taking it would have confirmed something I feared during those months on the street. Which was? That hardship was changing me fundamentally. Eroding my principles. She met his eyes directly. I needed to prove to myself that I was still the person I had always been, regardless of my circumstances. Maxwell nodded slowly. That's why I fell in love with you. Not because you returned my wallet, but because of why you returned it. The tender moment was interrupted by Sarah's phone chiming with a reminder. I should start getting ready. The ceremony is in 3 hours, and Vivian will be here with the final press briefing soon. Maxwell stood, kissing her forehead before heading to the door. I'll let you prepare. Just remember, today isn't just about the new facility. It's about showing others in desperate situations that there's a path forward. After Maxwell left, Sarah moved to her closet, selecting the outfit she had carefully chosen for today's ceremony, a tailored navy suit that projected authority and professionalism while remaining approachable. As she dressed, she thought about how far she had come, not just in material circumstances, but in confidence and purpose. Her phone rang, displaying Vivian's name. Their relationship had evolved significantly over the years, from wary professional association to genuine friendship and mutual respect. Morning, Vivian. You're calling early. We have a situation. Vivian's tone was clipped, businesslike. A reporter from the Daily Chronicle is planning to run a story questioning the selection process for Second Start participants. Sarah frowned. On what grounds? They are claiming favoritism in the selection committee, suggesting that personal connections are influencing who gets accepted into the program. That's absurd. We have a blind assessment process specifically to prevent that. I know, Vivian sighed. But perception matters, especially today. The reporter will be at the ceremony. You should be prepared for questions. Do you want me to have someone look into this reporter's sources? He offered when she finished. Sarah shook her head firmly. No. That would only validate their suspicions about influence and power. I'll address this directly at the press conference if it comes up. Are you sure? This ceremony is too important to be derailed by baseless accusations. If the accusations are truly baseless, then transparency is our best approach, Sarah insisted. I've never used my connection to you to influence program decisions, and I won't start now by trying to suppress legitimate questions. Maxwell studied her for a moment, then nodded. You're right, of course. I'm just protective of what you've built. What we've built, she corrected gently. Your support made it possible, but you've always respected my leadership of the initiative. That's what makes our partnership work, personally and professionally. The construction site for Second Start Village was transformed for the ceremony. A large tent protected rows of chairs from the morning sunlight, while the foundation of the main building served as a backdrop for the speaker's podium. City officials, business leaders, and program participants gathered, creating a diverse audience that represented all facets of the initiative's community impact. Sarah surveyed the scene from a small preparation area, making last-minute adjustments to her remarks. She spotted the reporter from the Daily Chronicle, a young woman with an intense expression, who was busily taking notes as she observed the proceedings. Rather than avoiding her, Sarah made a mental note to approach her directly after the formal ceremony. Maxwell appeared at her side, handsome in a charcoal suit. Ready? As I'll ever be. She took a deep breath. This feels like the culmination of everything since that day on the street. It's just the beginning, he assured her. What you're building here will outlast both of us. The ceremony began with remarks from the mayor, followed by testimony from 3 program graduates who shared their journeys from homelessness to stability. Their stories were powerful reminders of both the systemic failures that led to homelessness and the human potential often overlooked in those experiencing it. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she approached the podium with the quiet confidence she had developed over years of advocacy work. Looking out at the audience, she set aside her prepared remarks. 3 years and 4 months ago, I was homeless, she began, her voice clear and steady. Not temporarily between residences, not staying with friends, truly homeless, sleeping in shelters when beds were available, carrying everything I owned in a backpack, and walking miles each day looking for work that never materialized. A hush fell over the audience. Though her background wasn't a secret, Sarah rarely spoke about it so directly in public forums. Each day became an exercise in maintaining dignity in a world designed to strip it away. Simple things: finding a place to shower before a job interview, having a phone number for potential employers to call, keeping one professional outfit clean and presentable became nearly impossible challenges. She paused, making eye contact with various audience members, including the Chronicle reporter, who was now watching her intently. I was fortunate. A chance encounter led to an opportunity that changed everything for me. But luck shouldn't determine whether someone escapes the cycle of homelessness. Systems should exist to provide not handouts, but pathways back to self-sufficiency. Sarah gestured to the construction site behind her. Second Start Village isn't charity. It's investment in human potential, in community stability, and in economic growth. Every person who transitions from dependency to contribution represents a victory, not just for that individual, but for all of us. She continued, addressing the selection process directly without mentioning the pending article. Our program has a rigorous, blind assessment process designed to identify candidates with both significant need and readiness for change. We believe in transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. If we make mistakes, we acknowledge them and do better. What we don't do is compromise our integrity or play favorites. The rest of her speech outlined the village's features and the data-driven approach that informed its design. When she concluded, the applause was enthusiastic and sustained. After the ceremonial groundbreaking, Sarah made her way through the crowd toward the Chronicle reporter, who was conversing with one of the program graduates. "Excuse me," Sarah said, "I'd like to address those concerns directly. Would you have time after the event to discuss them?" Andrea hesitated, clearly surprised by the direct approach. Yes, that would be helpful." "Good. In the meantime, please speak with as many program participants as possible. Their experiences matter more than any speculation." The remainder of the event passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations. Sarah noticed Maxwell observing her exchange with the reporter from across the tent, a mixture of pride and concern in his expression. When they finally had a moment alone, he pulled her aside. That was a risk, approaching her directly. Sarah shrugged slightly. Transparency isn't a risk if we have nothing to hide. And if her sources are fabricating concerns to undermine the program, then giving her access to accurate information and real participants is the best counter to misinformation. Sarah squeezed his hand. "Trust me on this." Later that afternoon, Sarah met with Andrea Morales in her office at the Second Start headquarters. The reporter arrived with a notebook full of questions and what appeared to be a predetermined narrative. But as Sarah walked her through the anonymized application process, the statistical outcomes, and finally arranged for her to observe an actual selection committee meeting, with applicant identities protected, Andrea's skepticism visibly diminished. "I have to ask," Andrea said near the end of their discussion, "your relationship with Maxwell Richardson is well known. Has he ever suggested particular candidates for the program?" "Not once," Sarah answered without hesitation. "Maxwell provides funding and serves on the foundation board, but he has no involvement in individual selection decisions. That separation is essential to the program's integrity." Andrea made notes, then closed her notebook. "Thank you for your transparency, Ms. Jenkins. It's uncommon in my experience. Call me Sarah. And transparency is central to everything we do here." Our participants trust us with their futures. We owe them nothing less than complete honesty and ethical practices. After showing Andrea out, Sarah returned to her office to find Maxwell waiting. "How did it go?" "Better than expected," she replied. "I think she came in looking for a scandal and found a carefully designed system instead." "Your approach worked, then." "We'll see when the article comes out." Sarah collapsed into her chair, suddenly exhausted. "But regardless, I stand by our process and our mission." Maxwell perched on the edge of her desk. "You were magnificent today, you know. Not just with the reporter, but your speech. Sharing your experience that way. It couldn't have been easy." "It gets easier each time," Sarah admitted. "At first, I was ashamed of having been homeless, as if it reflected some personal failure. Now I understand it was a chapter in my story, not the whole book. A chapter that made you uniquely qualified to help others write new endings to their stories." Maxwell's expression grew serious. "Which reminds me, I have news about the national expansion." The Second Start Board had been considering taking the program nationwide, creating a template that could be implemented in cities across the country. The prospect was both exciting and daunting. "What news?" "The Keller Foundation wants to partner with us. Their funding would allow us to launch in 5 additional cities by next year." Sarah's eyes widened. The Keller Foundation was among the largest philanthropic organizations in the country, known for rigorous standards and transformative grants. "That's incredible. What prompted their interest?" "You did." Maxwell smiled. "Elizabeth Keller attended a conference where you spoke last month. She was impressed by the data-driven approach and the dignity-centered model. Their team has been quietly vetting the program ever since." "This would change everything," Sarah breathed, mind already racing with possibilities. "The model could impact thousands more lives." "With one condition," Maxwell added. "They want you to personally oversee the national expansion." Sarah fell silent, processing the implications. Such a role would require extensive travel, countless hours, and taking on national visibility as the face of the initiative. "I need time to think about this," she finally said. "Of course. It's a significant commitment." Maxwell stood, preparing to leave. "Take all the time you need. The wedding planning can wait if necessary." This comment caught Sarah by surprise. Maxwell studied her thoughtfully. "You know, when we first met, I wouldn't have even considered how my work affected my personal life. Success was everything. You've changed that perspective for me." "We've changed each other," Sarah replied softly. "That's what partnership means." That evening, as they shared a quiet dinner at home, Sarah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey from that first encounter with the wallet to today's groundbreaking ceremony. The contrast between her former desperation and current influence sometimes felt surreal. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Maxwell asked, noticing her distraction. "I was thinking about how different things might have been if I hadn't found your wallet that day." "You would have found another path," he said with certainty. "Your determination and integrity would have created opportunity eventually." "Perhaps," Sarah acknowledged. "But I'm grateful it happened the way it did." Maxwell reached across the table for her hand. "As am I, finding that wallet was luck. What you've built since then has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with vision and persistence." Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand in return. "We should visit the construction site next week. I want to see how the community spaces are taking shape." "Of course. It's your vision coming to life." Our vision, Sarah corrected gently. Remember what you told me when I first pitched the concept. That it needed to balance idealism with practicality. Maxwell nodded. You've achieved that balance beautifully. Later that night, as Maxwell slept beside her, Sarah scrolled through her phone, reading a message from Andrea Morales. The reporter had sent a draft of her article for fact-checking, a courtesy Sarah hadn't expected. Rather than an expose questioning the program's selection process, Andrea had written a nuanced piece exploring how Second Start's model differed from traditional homeless services, with transparency and dignity as central themes. The article concluded with a quote from one of the program graduates: "Second Start didn't just give me housing or a job. They gave me back my belief that I matter, that my future is worth investing in. That's something you can't put a price on." Sarah set down her phone, deeply moved by the sentiment that so perfectly captured what she had hoped to achieve. From her own experience of homelessness, she had understood that material needs were just one dimension of the challenge. The erosion of self-worth and hope often persisted long after housing was secured. As she drifted toward sleep, Sarah's thoughts turned to the Keller Foundation offer and the national expansion. The prospect was exhilarating, but also intimidating. Scaling the program would mean new challenges, potential compromises, and the risk of losing the personal touch that made Second Start special. Yet she couldn't deny the moral imperative to extend the model if it truly worked. Every city had people like she had been, talented individuals temporarily derailed by circumstance, needing not charity, but opportunity. Tomorrow she would begin planning the expansion strategy. For tonight, she allowed herself to simply appreciate how far she had come, from searching for dropped coins on sidewalks to influencing national policy on homelessness. A journey that began with a found wallet had become a mission to help others find their way back from the margins of society. As she curled against Maxwell's sleeping form, Sarah whispered a quiet thank you to whatever fate or fortune had placed that wallet in her path and given her not just a second chance, but the opportunity to create second chances for others. The construction of Second Start Village progressed rapidly over the following months. Sarah visited the site weekly, often bringing program participants to gather their input on design modifications. Their practical suggestions enhanced security features, more communal cooking spaces, dedicated quiet areas for job searching and studying enriched the project in ways the architects hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, Andrea Morales' article had generated unexpected positive attention. Rather than questioning the program's practices, it had highlighted them as a model for ethical, effective intervention in the homelessness crisis. Other reporters followed up, interested in the data-driven approach and the emphasis on dignity and self-determination. 6 months after the groundbreaking ceremony, Sarah stood in the central courtyard of the nearly completed village, watching as workers installed benches around a small fountain. The space was designed as a gathering place somewhere residents could build community connections while maintaining privacy in their individual units. "It's even more beautiful than the renderings," Maxwell commented, joining her in the courtyard. He had been meeting with the construction supervisor, reviewing the final timeline for occupancy. "It feels real now," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "After all the planning and fundraising and setbacks. It's actually happening." Maxwell slipped an arm around her waist. "You never doubted it would." "I doubted constantly," she admitted with a small laugh. "Every step of the way. But doubting and giving up are different things. A distinction you've mastered." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "The first residents move in next month. Have you decided about the Keller expansion?" Sarah nodded. "I am going to accept the role, but with conditions. I'll oversee the strategic development and training, but delegate the day-to-day implementation to local teams. That way I can maintain quality without constant travel. Wise approach. Maxwell glanced at his watch. We should head back. The wedding planner is meeting us at 4. Their wedding was scheduled for the spring, a deliberately small ceremony planned for the rooftop garden of the Richardson Enterprises building. After much discussion, they had opted for intimacy over spectacle, inviting only close friends and essential business associates. As they walked toward the car, Sarah's phone rang. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number with the city. After prolonged discussion and the completion of necessary paperwork, Sarah drove Teresa to the Second Start Intake Center. The older woman remained quiet during the drive, gazing out at the city streets with an unreadable expression. At the center, Sarah introduced Teresa to the intake coordinator, explained the situation, and stayed through the initial assessment process. By early evening, Teresa had been assigned temporary housing and scheduled for a comprehensive evaluation the following day. As they said goodbye, Teresa gripped Sarah's hand tightly. Why are you doing this? For me specifically, I mean. Sarah considered the question carefully. When I was homeless, you showed me kindness when you had nothing to gain from it. That mattered to me. Now I have resources to help, and that matters too. Teresa nodded slowly. You didn't forget. No, Sarah confirmed. I didn't forget. It was nearly 9 when Sarah arrived home. Maxwell was working in his study, but set aside his laptop when she appeared in the doorway. How did it go? Sarah sank into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. She's in temporary housing and enrolled in the program. Whether she stays is up to her, but she has the opportunity now. You look troubled, Maxwell observed. What's wrong? Seeing Teresa. It was like seeing an alternate version of my own future. Sarah rubbed her temples. 4 years ago, we were in the same shelter. Today, I'm planning a wedding and directing a multi-million-dollar initiative while she's being arrested for seeking shelter from the rain. You made different choices, Maxwell suggested gently. Did I? Or did I just have different opportunities? Sarah challenged. Teresa is intelligent and resourceful. She survived on the streets for years. But she never found a wallet that led to a job interview. Maxwell was quiet for a moment. What are you saying? I'm saying success isn't just about individual merit. It's also about chances and timing and someone believing in you when you've stopped believing in yourself. Sarah leaned forward intently. That's what our work needs to acknowledge more explicitly. Not everyone gets the lucky break I did, but everyone deserves the opportunity to rebuild their lives. So what do you want to do? I want to expand the mentorship component of the program. Pair participants with people who can open doors for them not through charity, but through genuine professional relationships. Sarah's voice grew more animated as the concept developed. Connection is as important as housing or job training. It's what restores people to the social fabric. Maxwell's expression shifted from concern to admiration. You continue to evolve the model based on real experiences. That's why it works. It works because we listen more than we prescribe, Sarah corrected. Each person who comes through our doors has expertise in their own situation. Our job is to remove barriers and provide resources, not dictate solutions. They talked late into the night, Sarah's encounter with Teresa catalyzing new ideas for both the existing program and the planned national expansion. By the time they finally went to bed, she had outlined a revised approach that centered relationship building alongside practical support. As Sarah drifted toward sleep in Maxwell's arms, she reflected on the day's stark reminder of how precarious life could be and how arbitrary success often was. Her last conscious thought was a renewed commitment to create systems that recognized human dignity even when circumstance had stripped away everything else. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of activity. Between finalizing wedding details, preparing for the village's official opening, and developing the framework for the national expansion, Sarah hardly had a moment to breathe. Yet she made time to check on Teresa's progress, encouraged to learn that the older woman remained in the program, cautiously engaging with the opportunities presented. 1 month before the wedding, Sarah received an unexpected call from Andrea Morales, the Chronicle reporter, who had written the article about Second Start. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Andrea began, "but I'm working on a follow-up piece about innovative approaches to homelessness, and I'd love to interview you again." Of course, Sarah agreed, checking her calendar. "What's the focus this time?" "The human element beyond statistics," Andrea explained. "Success stories, but also the ongoing challenges. The public responds to numbers, but they connect with stories." Sarah considered this. "I may have something better than an interview to offer you." 2 days later, Sarah met Andrea at the Second Start administrative offices, where 4 program participants had agreed to share their experiences. Among them was Teresa Cahill, who had gradually become more invested in the program after seeing tangible improvements in her circumstances. "The interviews will be conducted with dignity and respect," Sarah assured the participants. "Ms. Morales has agreed to let you review your portions before publication, and you can withdraw consent at any time." Teresa, who had been skeptical about speaking with a reporter, approached Sarah as the others were being interviewed. "This fancy life you have now," she began bluntly, "with the rich fiancé and the big office. You ever feel like you are playing a part that isn't really you?" The question caught Sarah off guard with its perceptiveness. "Sometimes," she admitted. "There are moments when it all feels surreal, like I might wake up back in the shelter." Teresa nodded slowly. "But you're using it well. This program, it's different from others I've tried. Treats people like they matter. They do matter. You matter," Sarah said firmly. "That's the foundation of everything we do." When Teresa's turn for the interview came, Sarah expected her to speak about the practical benefits of the program, the housing, the job training, the healthcare access. Instead, Teresa focused on something else entirely. "The thing about homelessness isn't just not having a place," she told Andrea. "It's becoming invisible. People look through you, not at you. This program, what Sarah built, it starts by seeing you as a whole person, not just a problem to solve." Later, as Sarah drove home, Teresa's words echoed in her mind. The older woman had articulated something essential about the program's philosophy, something Sarah had felt intuitively but never expressed so directly. Being seen, truly seen, was fundamental to restoring dignity. It was what Maxwell had offered her that first day in his office, looking past her circumstances to recognize her capabilities. When she arrived home, Sarah found Maxwell in the kitchen preparing dinner, a skill he had developed only recently, part of his effort to create more balance in their lives together. "You're cooking," she observed with pleased surprise. Attempting to, he corrected with a self-deprecating smile. "How was the interview session?" Sarah recounted Teresa's unexpected insight while helping with dinner preparations. As they worked side by side, she found herself overwhelmed by a sudden wave of gratitude for the life they had built together and the work they were able to do. Teresa asked if I ever feel like I'm playing a part that isn't really me, she told Maxwell. It made me realize something. What's that? I don't feel that way anymore. Sarah turned to face him fully. For a long time after you hired me, I felt like an imposter in this world of wealth and influence. But now I understand that worlds can intersect without one replacing the other. I bring my experiences from both realities into everything we build together. Maxwell considered this thoughtfully. That intersection is what makes our work effective. Neither of us could do this alone. My resources without your insights, or your vision without the means to implement it. Exactly. Sarah smiled, a sense of clarity washing over her. That's why the national expansion needs to maintain local leadership and perspectives. The model works because it bridges different worlds. As they sat down to dinner, Sarah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey from that moment of finding Maxwell's wallet to the present. What had begun as a desperate attempt to secure employment had evolved into a partnership that transformed not only their own lives, but the lives of hundreds, soon to be thousands of others. The wedding was now just weeks away, the village about to welcome its first residents, and the national expansion taking shape. Yet amid all the external achievements, what Sarah valued most was the internal growth, the confidence that she belonged precisely where she was, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Maxwell raised his glass in a toast to seeing people as they truly are. Sarah clinked her glass against his, Teresa's words still resonating. And to being truly seen. 2 weeks before the wedding, the first residents began moving into Second Start Village. Sarah was present for each arrival, personally welcoming people to their new homes. The expressions on their faces, as they received keys to their own spaces, many, for the first time in years, reinforced the importance of the work more powerfully than any statistics could have done. On the third day of Move INS, Sarah spotted a familiar figure sitting on one of the courtyard benches. Teresa, observing the activities with her characteristic quiet intensity. "How are you settling in?" Sarah asked, joining her on the bench. "Place feels too nice for someone like me," Teresa admitted. "Keep waiting for the catch." "No catch," Sarah assured her. "Just high expectations of us as much as you. We promised quality housing and support, and we are accountable for delivering it." Teresa nodded slowly. "Your wedding's coming up soon. 2 weeks from Saturday." "Never thought I'd see one of us end up marrying a billionaire," Teresa remarked with wry humor. "Like some kind of fairy tale." Sarah laughed softly. "Hardly a fairy tale. We are real people building a real life together. The circumstances of our meeting were unusual, but what matters is what we've created since then." Still, Teresa persisted, "It's quite a story. Girl finds wallet, returns it, gets job offer, falls in love with the boss." She shook her head in amazement. "You should write a book." "Maybe someday," Sarah conceded. "But there are more important stories to tell first, like the ones happening right here in this village." As move-in day concluded, Sarah found Maxwell waiting for her near the administration building. He had been meeting with the village's management team, reviewing operational procedures before full occupancy. "Productive day?" he asked as they walked to the car. "Very." 17 new residents settled in. Sarah couldn't keep the satisfaction from her voice. Seeing them with their own keys, their own spaces. It makes all the bureaucratic battles worthwhile. "I saw you talking with Teresa earlier. How is she adapting?" Cautiously, Sarah replied. "She's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Can't quite believe this isn't temporary." Maxwell nodded, understanding. Trust takes time, especially when life has given you reasons to be suspicious. She called our story a fairy tale, Sarah added with a small smile. Rich man and homeless woman meet by chance and fall in love. Well, when you put it that way. Maxwell chuckled. Though I think we've worked hard to build something real beyond that initial meeting. We have, Sarah agreed firmly. Our relationship isn't defined by how we met, but by what we've created together personally and through the foundation work. As they drove home, the setting sun cast golden light across the city skyline. Sarah gazed at the familiar streets, remembering how differently they had appeared when she walked them searching for employment, hungry and increasingly desperate. The contrast between then and now sometimes still disoriented her. Penny for your thoughts? Maxwell asked, noticing her introspection. I was thinking about perspective, she replied. How the same city can look entirely different depending on your circumstances. When I was homeless, these streets felt hostile, full of barriers and judgment. Now they are filled with possibility. And that's what Second Start offers, Maxwell observed. Not just material support, but a shift in perspective from survival mode to building mode. Sarah smiled at his understanding. Exactly. It's why the program works when others fail. We are not just addressing immediate needs, we are creating space for people to envision different futures for themselves. The days leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations, media interviews about the village opening, and planning sessions for the national expansion. Through it all, Sarah maintained her regular visits to the village, determined that nothing, not even her wedding, would signal to residents that they were less important than her personal life. The evening before the ceremony, Sarah slipped away from the rehearsal dinner to visit Teresa once more. She found the older woman tending to a small container garden outside her unit, something the horticulture program had encouraged residents to create. Wedding jitters? Teresa asked, noting Sarah's formal attire from the dinner. Not about Maxwell, Sarah replied honestly. Just the public nature of it all. I'm more comfortable behind the scenes. Not an option when you marry someone like him. No, Sarah acknowledged. But we've kept the ceremony small at least. Teresa brushed soil from her hands and fixed Sarah with a penetrating look. You know what I wondered when I first